The city was alive with the hum of lights and the distant echo of car horns. But on the rooftop of the tallest skyscraper, a moment of quiet chaos unfolded that would change to lives forever. Mina, a seemingly ordinary young woman with a secret, magical power she had long kept hidden from the world, had been practicing her abilities in the shadows, transforming energy into light with gestures that seemed almost like dancing, unaware that tonight would test every ounce of her courage. Because below her, in the executive suite of the city's most powerful corporation, Alexander Moreau, a billionaire CEO known for his icy demeanor and ruthless business tactics, was struggling for life after someone had slipped a deadly poison into his drink. A sinister plot hatched by rivals jealous of his empire and control. And no one else in the building realized the danger that was creeping with each tick of the clock, his pulse faltering, his vision blurring, until a flash of glowing energy caught Mina's attention through the glass ceiling, instinct guiding her, even though she didn't fully understand why. Without hesitation, she summoned her powers and materialized a shimmering portal, a bridge between her world and his. And as she landed in his office in a cascade of golden light, Alexander gasped, shocked, not just by her sudden appearance, but by the warmth of her presence. A stark contrast to the sterile corporate environment he was used to dominating, and before either could speak, Mina sensed the venom in his bloodstream, her magical intuition telling her exactly how to counteract it, every move precise, every gesture radiating healing light that seeped into his veins, neutralizing the poison with a brilliance that seemed impossible. And as Alexander's eyes fluttered open, focusing on the girl who had just saved him, a mix of disbelief and awe spread across his face, because he had never encountered anyone like her. Someone who could appear in an instant and alter the course of life itself. And even as his body regained strength, his mind raced, questions and emotions colliding in a way that left him both frightened and exhilarated. And when Mina spoke softly, her voice trembling with a mixture of fear and relief, explaining that she had no idea why she had been drawn here, but that she couldn't stand by while someone suffered, Alexander's heart, which had been encased in years of calculated logic and business dealings, softened in a way it hadn't in decades, a spark igniting that he didn't want to ignore. And though Mina herself was wary, unsure of what she had stepped into, the connection between them was undeniable. A magnetic pull that defied reason, and by the time the paramedics arrived, who had been called by Alexander's secretary, the room was already transformed from one of danger to one of quiet intimacy. The air charged with electricity and unspoken feelings, and Alexander, in a moment of impulsive clarity that startled even him, reached out, touching her hand and declaring that she had not just saved his life, but awakened something in him he hadn't realized existed. And Mina, caught between awe and fear, felt her heart skip as the world seemed to shrink to just the two of them, their surroundings fading as though nothing else mattered. And before the night ended, with the city lights twinkling below like distant stars, Alexander, in a bold decision that shocked even his closest advisors, asked her to stay with him, not just as a guest or a friend, but as someone he wanted by his side. And Mina, yet strangely certain that this was a path she hadn't planned, but somehow needed to follow, agreed, and the chapter closed. On a rooftop where a magical girl and a powerful CEO began a story that neither could have anticipated, leaving the audience breathless, desperate to know how such an unlikely pairing would survive a world filled with danger, intrigue, and a love that had ignited in a single miraculous moment. The morning after that miraculous rooftop encounter, the city felt both ordinary and surreal, as if nothing had changed, yet everything had. Because Mina now reluctantly swept into Alexander's opulent world of glass towers, luxury cars, and relentless corporate demands, found herself struggling to navigate a life that was simultaneously intoxicating and terrifying. Her magical powers, once secret and personal, now a hidden asset she couldn't afford to reveal too openly. Yet with every passing moment, Alexander's attention was a constant, a magnetic force that alternated between protectiveness, admiration, and the kind of fascination that made her pulse race and her carefully constructed walls tremble. And Alexander, for his part, was consumed by an obsession he didn't fully understand. The feeling that Mina was more than she appeared, that she had stepped into his life not by chance, but by fate. And as the days unfolded, his corporate rivals, sensing the CEO's distraction, began plotting more aggressively, whispering in boardrooms about weaknesses, leaked memos, underhanded schemes that aimed to exploit the one thing Alexander had never expected to wield: emotion. A vulnerability no one had ever seen in him before, and one that Mina, unaware of the full extent of the danger, nonetheless felt in the form of tension that clung to her every step, because wherever she went, threats seemed to linger in the shadows, subtle yet menacing, from poisoned lunches to suspicious emails, each a reminder that the world she had entered was far more dangerous than the quiet life she had known in one afternoon. While Alexander was in a high-stakes meeting with potential investors who were known to be ruthless and calculating, Mina, sensing a disturbance in the energy around her, instinctively traced her fingers through the air, creating a faint shimmer of protective light, unaware that her magic, though subtle, had already foiled a hidden attempt to harm Alexander. And later, when the meeting ended and Alexander returned to find her waiting with an almost defiant calm, he was struck not only by her courage, but by the undeniable aura of power that surrounded her. And in that moment, words became unnecessary. Their eyes communicating everything: gratitude, admiration, attraction, and the simmering realization that their lives were intertwined in a way neither could ignore. And as the days turned into nights, their bond deepened through stolen conversations in his sprawling penthouse, laughter over shared meals and moments of vulnerability where Alexander admitted that no one had ever made him feel alive the way she did, while Mina confessed, though carefully, that she had never known anyone like him. Someone whose intensity and focus could be both terrifying and exhilarating. And yet, despite the growing closeness, tension mounted externally as Alexander's rivals escalated their attacks, sending threats directly to his office, sabotaging contracts, and planting spies within his closest circle. And Mina, caught between fear and duty, realized that saving him once was not enough, that she would need to summon her courage and her magic in ways she had never imagined, because the stakes were higher now, not just for Alexander's life, but for their fragile, burgeoning love. And one evening, as a storm raged outside, lightning flashing across the skyline, the rivals made their most audacious move yet, attempting a direct attack on Alexander during a gala that was supposed to celebrate a major corporate merger. And Mina, disguised beneath the glittering gowns of the elite, sensed the danger before anyone else, her heart pounding as she followed the invisible threads of malicious intent through the crowd, weaving her way with a combination of agility, intuition, and raw magical power. And just as a dagger meant for Alexander's chest arced through the air, she appeared, her energy flaring like a comet, deflecting the weapon with a shield of pure light and sending the would-be assailant sprawling, the crowd gasping in astonishment as they glimpsed a woman who seemed less human than something miraculous. And Alexander, rushing to her side, was both terrified and awestruck, his hands gripping hers, feeling the pulse of life and power that radiated from her in waves that left him speechless. When in the aftermath, as security restrained the attackers and chaos turned into whispers of awe and speculation, he pulled Mina close, his voice thick with emotion, declaring that he didn't care about the scandal, the danger, or the world outside, because in that moment she was all that mattered: his savior, his heart, and the one person who had penetrated the fortress he had built around himself. And Mina, her own fear mingling with relief, realized that she had not just saved his life again, but had become an inseparable part of it. And as the storm subsided and the city lights shimmered like scattered diamonds across the horizon, Alexander, in a bold and impulsive move that stunned everyone, including his board members, his security team, and even Mina herself, proposed marriage right there, amidst the hushed gasps of the elite crowd, declaring that he would no longer waste a moment of life without her, that she had transformed his world in ways no money, power, or influence ever could. And Mina, though trembling, her mind racing. With questions about the speed of it all, felt an undeniable certainty, a magnetic pull that told her this was right, that love like this, rare and transformative, did not come twice in a lifetime, and she said yes, her voice almost lost in the awestruck murmurs of the guests, and as Alexander lifted her into his arms, spinning her with a joy that left everyone speechless, the cameras flashing and the world watching, a mix of envy, admiration, and disbelief spread across the room. Because no one had ever seen a CEO fall so completely and publicly in love with someone so unexpected, and yet the real story was not the spectacle, but the bond that had been forged through danger, courage, and a single miraculous act of heroism. Leaving the audience on the edge of their seats, hearts racing, desperate to know what trials and revelations the next chapter would hold, how Mina would navigate a life of opulence and peril, and whether Alexander's love, fierce and immediate, as it was, could withstand the intrigues of a world that had never dealt gently with those who dared to defy it. The weeks leading up to their wedding had been a whirlwind of preparations, whispered speculations, and ever-present threats that seemed determined to disrupt the fragile peace Alexander and Mina had fought so hard to establish, because even though the world saw the billionaire CEO and his magical bride-to-be as a perfect, almost fairy tale pairing behind closed doors, every day was a delicate balancing act between danger and devotion, with Alexander's rivals growing, increasingly desperate as they realized that no scheme, no bribery, and no manipulation could sever the bond between him and the girl who had saved his life, not once but twice. And Mina, despite her initial hesitation to fully immerse herself in this world of wealth, power, and relentless scrutiny, found herself growing stronger. Her magic no longer just a personal gift, but a vital force capable of protecting the man she had come to love more than life itself, her intuition sharpening, her courage deepening with every whispered threat, every suspicious glance, every subtle attempt at sabotage that crossed her path. And Alexander, who had once believed himself untouchable, discovered that true strength lay not in control or wealth, but in trust, vulnerability, and a love that defied logic and reason. And as the city prepared for what would be the most talked-about wedding of the decade, with invitations sent to the elite, the media abuzz with speculation, and the skyline lit with anticipation, the couple knew that this union was not just a personal triumph, but a symbol of triumph over fear, doubt, and danger. Yet the world outside had not yet relinquished its malevolent hold, because the enemies who had plotted poisoning's attacks and corporate sabotage were now more audacious than ever, planning a final, calculated attempt to disrupt the ceremony itself, confident that if they could strike at this pinnacle moment, they could undo everything Alexander and Mina had built. And on the night of the wedding, as the grand hall shimmered with the glow of crystal chandeliers and magical lights subtly infused by Mina's protective enchantments, tension coiled in the air like an invisible serpent, a silent threat lurking beneath the glittering surface. For even as the guests arrive, enchanted by the spectacle and unaware of the danger, the shadows of conspiracy slithered close, poised to strike at the exact moment that would make the most dramatic impact. And Mina, sensing the disturbance, felt the familiar surge of magic within her, the energy thrumming in harmony with her, heartbeat warning her of every subtle movement, every malicious intention hidden in plain sight. And Alexander, standing at the altar in his perfectly tailored suit, noticed the sharpness in her gaze, the way her hand tightened around as ever, so slightly, the unspoken communication that told him they were not just facing a threat to their wedding, but to their lives. And in that instant, the past, with all its chaos, poisonings, and peril, converged with the present, reminding them both of the fragility of life and the unshakable strength of their connection. And as Mina's fingers traced intricate patterns in the air, a shimmer of protective light forming around the perimeter of the hall, invisible to the human eye, Alexander's mind raced through contingency plans, security protocols, and the impossible realization that he had never felt so powerless and yet so completely alive. And then, just as the first notes of the wedding music began to play, a sharp, almost imperceptible movement in the crowd drew Mina's attention, and she reacted instinctively. The magical shield flaring with brilliance that startled even the seasoned security personnel. Deflecting a dagger aimed at Alexander with a flash that left the would-be attacker stumbling backward, gasping in disbelief and in the chaos that followed as whispered panic spread among the guests. Alexander rushed to Mina's side, his hand gripping hers, feeling the surge of her power and the depth of her bravery, and in that moment, a realization crystallized in his mind that no amount of money, influence, or planning could ever equal the value of having someone so courageous, so selfless, and so utterly devoted by his side. Someone who had not only saved his life, but had become the beating heart of his world, in Mina. Though exhausted from the constant tension and the effort required to protect him, found a profound sense of purpose in their union. Understanding that love, courage, and magic intertwined in ways the world could never fully comprehend. And as the attacker was restrained and whispers of awe spread through the crowd, Alexander, his voice filled with emotion rarely seen in the cold, calculating CEO, declared that nothing in the world mattered more to him than the woman standing beside him. The girl whose bravery had transformed his life, and in a move that left everyone, friends, family, rivals, and guests utterly speechless. He asked her, here and now, in the glow of magical lights and the hum of anticipation, to be not just his wife, but his partner, his equal, and his heart for all the days to come. And Mina, tears glimmering in her eyes, felt the magnetic pull of destiny, courage, and love converge into a singular certainty that this moment, chaotic and perfect as it was the culmination of everything that had led them to each other, the answer to unspoken questions, the resolution of past dangers, and the beginning of a life that promised both wonder and challenge. And as she whispered her assent, the hall erupted in a symphony of applause, gasps, and tears. But the world beyond had one final test to deliver, because in the shadows of the penthouse, secretive faction of rivals, the ones who had orchestrated countless plots against Alexander and now sought to steal everything in one final blow, activated their hidden contingency, a surge of energy, mechanical and malevolent, designed to shatter the ceremony. And Mina, sensing the disruption through a pulse of her magic that resonated even beyond the physical senses, stepped forward, her light intensifying, flaring brighter than ever before, forming a dome of protection that deflected every attack, neutralized every trap, and revealed to all the assembled guests the extraordinary reality of her power, leaving them awestruck, whispering about the magical girl who had not only captured the heart of a billionaire, but had saved everyone in the room from certain disaster. And Alexander, watching her, realized that the life he had once built on control, strategy, and fear was now dwarfed by the love, bravery, and unshakable spirit of the woman beside him. And as the final threat dissipated, defeated by her courage and skill, he pulled Mina close, his arms steady despite the adrenaline and relief surging through him, and kissed her in front of the astonished crowd, sealing not only their vows, but the triumph of love and courage over fear, its envy and malice. And in the quiet aftermath, when the city outside held its collective breath at the news and the couple stood together on the balcony, bathed in the glow of dawn, Mina felt the weight of all they had endured lift, replaced by a profound sense of belonging, of purpose, and of a love that had been forged in trials, danger, and impossible circumstances. And Alexander, looking into her eyes, saw not only the woman who had saved his life, but the equal partner he had always needed, someone whose strength, wisdom, and heart would shape every day of their future. And together, hand in hand, heart in heart, they faced the horizon, the sun rising in colors that mirrored the magic and wonder of their journey, knowing that though the world could be unpredictable, perilous, and at times cruel, the bond they shared was unbreakable, and that the story of a magical girl who accidentally saved a poisoned CEO, of love sparked in the most unexpected circumstances, of courage and destiny converging, had reached a triumphant conclusion that would be whispered about, admired and remembered by all who heard it, leaving the audience breathless, inspired, and completely satisfied by a tale that had combined magic, romance, suspense, and the ultimate power of love into a narrative both extraordinary and unforgettable. A story that would resonate far beyond its pages, reminding everyone that sometimes life's most miraculous moments emerge from the most unexpected encounters, and that love, courage, and belief in the impossible can conquer even the darkest threats. Leaving the world forever changed by a magical girl and the billionaire whose heart she had saved, healed, and ultimately transformed forever.